This week we're going to be making Buttermilk and Elderflower Tart from the Irish Cookbook by J.P. McMahon. I brought this cookbook back with me from my trip to Ireland when I ate at his restaurant Anyar in Galway. Highly recommend you try that restaurant out if you happen to be in Galway because it's a set menu. I believe it has a Michelin star and it's a set menu where they sort of go through the history of Irish cooking. I've made a few things out of this book and everything I've made so far has been really good, from the oaten bread, batch bread, brown Irish soda bread, lots of baked things, but also things like a walnut and chanterelle tarts that was in this as well. So we're going to begin our recipe just with a basic tart dough here. I've got 2 1/3 cups of all-purpose flour that I've sifted into this bowl. We're also going to put 1/3 cup of confectioner's sugar in. Just a pinch of sea salt. And then we've got 1 1/2 sticks of cubed butter. And you want to have this be in the fridge before you bring it in, because now we're just going to mix this with our hands until we get to, this all sort of comes together into the texture of like wet sand before we move on to the next part. Now we're going to add in a couple of egg yolks and just a little bit of ice water. You really want to just, this is going to be sort of variable, but just enough cold water to get the dough to come together. So just add a little bit at a time, and the second your dough comes together and becomes smooth and doesn't stick, then you can stop adding any more water. But just add like a tablespoon at a time until you get the dough to come together. The tart dough has come together, and so now we're just going to wrap this up and put this in the refrigerator for about an hour to let it chill. We've got our chilled tart dough, and this is going to make a fairly large tart, like an 11 or 12 inch tart ring that you're going to need. I've got my 11 inch, actually I think this is an 11.5 incher up here, and we're just going to flour your rolling pin a little bit. And so generally when you're rolling out tart dough, you want to roll this to be about 1 inch bigger than whatever pan you're using. So if you're using an 11 inch one, you want to make it a 12 inch circle of dough to be able to fit it up the sides as well. All right, I've got our tart dough rolled out here. This is also sort of a good way to measure if you've rolled it out enough. Just put the tart pan on top of the dough, and we're just going to lift this up. And drape it over the top. And so just sort of let it work its way down bit by bit. Take your time and go around the whole ring until you get it setting flat and in the fluted edges as well. All right, I've got it sitting flat. You really want to make sure it's sitting as close to a perpendicular and it's not tugging, the edges are not tugging on it, because if it's not really flush against the flutes on the side, then it'll droop down when we blind bake it and your tart will not be as tall as it should be. I think I did this in my peach tart video as well. You can use your rolling pin to make the edge of the crust nice and flush. See how easy that came out? To remove the excess pastry. And now we're going to put the tart shell back in the refrigerator for another hour. We have our chilled tart crust now, and we're going to go ahead and preheat the oven to 325 degrees. And we're going to cover this with some parchment paper. And then we're going to put pie weights in there. And be a little careful doing this so you don't damage your pastry crust underneath. Now, this is a very large tart shell, so I'm actually going to supplement these with some, which you can also use just for the whole thing if you want, with some dried beans to help weigh the shell down. And this is just to stop the bottom from rising up as we bake. So this is going to go in now for about 20 minutes, and then we're going to take this off and put it back in for another 5 minutes without the shield. While the tart shell is cooking, we can go ahead and make our filling. So we're going to put a cup of buttermilk, a cup of heavy cream, 6 beaten eggs, about half a cup of sugar, 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, and then this is sort of the special ingredient for this recipe, which is elderflower cordial. I found it at just my local Total Wine, but I'm sure any large liquor or wine store will carry it. So there's going to be about 3 tablespoons of this. And then we're just going to whisk all of this together until we get a smooth, custardy filling. To ensure we get a nice smooth custard in our tart when we fill it, we're actually going to run this through a fine mesh strainer to remove any solid bits that come from flour clumps or from the buttermilk or from the egg. So just go ahead and get as much of that as you can out of there. Tart shell is looking really good, so we're ready to go ahead and fill it. Go ahead and increase the heat in your oven to 340 degrees at this point. And just get all that goop into your tart. And now we're going to bake this for another 25 minutes at 340. The tart just popped out of the oven, and you can see it's nice and puffy still right now. It's going to settle down. We're going to let this now cool for a good hour on our rack here, and the custard will recondense at that point. You can also see how nice and brown the outer layers are of the pastry. So I think this came out really good. We still have the garnish to do, so we still have a couple things left, but we're almost at the finish line. This is the completed tart. The last bit was to garnish it with some edible flowers. You're supposed to garnish it with elderflowers, but European elderflower does not grow in Florida, so I did not know where I could find some fresh ones. I used sweet alyssum because they're edible and because they look somewhat similar to elderflowers, which is a small white flower. So this looks really good. The custard came out nice and even. Honestly, more so than pretty much any other custard or a pie or tart that I've made before. And I'll show you this crust here. Also came out just perfect. So this is going to be dessert for my family tomorrow. I'm going to put this, I like to serve these chilled sort of buttermilk type custardy desserts chilled. So I'll put this in the refrigerator and serve this tomorrow. And you should check out this book and check out Irish cuisine in general. It's not just what Americans stereotype about it. This is a good starting place. It has a lot of comprehensive recipes, both simple to difficult, for you to check out. So if you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe, and I will see you at the next video.